As you guys know, RVs come with a never-ending project list. Upgrades, fixes, this and that. There's always something to work on and the list never ever ends. Today we're going to share a couple of those projects with you. The first project we're going to talk about is the replacement of the Maxxair fan in our main bathroom. I've actually already replaced this fan once before, and now it's doing the same thing it was doing when I replaced it then. It's probably been about a year and a half since I've replaced this. On this fan that gets used a lot, the lid that goes up and down has a little gearbox there, and that gearbox starts to expand and come apart. And I think it's because of the way that fan operates. It's designed to actually go to the max, hit resistance and stop. Same thing with the lid that covers it, that's designed for that fan. It hits the top of that lid and stops. And I think over time maybe that is degrading the gears in there and that gearbox just fails. But you'll notice this spins, which is supposed to be turning the gears there and opening that up. But it just spins and spins and spins. It goes until it runs out of time. There's like a timeout and it stops. And that's how it first presents itself. Then after a while, more and more gears start to get stripped out, and eventually it just doesn't move, which is kind of how it is now. So I wanted to replace it a second time, only this time I wanted to do it with a little bit better fan. Took a note out of Jason and Ray's book, who are our friends, the Getaway Couple. We'll have a link to their channel and their install video down below. But the nice thing about this fan is it has a rain cover integrated on it, and it has a lot more features that we'll show you once we get to that. So you can see this is the MaxxFan Deluxe with remote, and this is the Maxxair Fan. Before you start working on anything electrical, throw the breaker, pull the fuse, whatever you've got to do to take power away from that unit. Now it's just a little 12-volt fan, so it probably wouldn't hurt me if I touched it or whatever, but I did pull the fuse just to be safe. Of course, before I can install the new fan, I have to remove the old one. Quite honestly, that's the bulk of this project as far as the workload is concerned. Both fans consist of a top half and a bottom half that kind of go together. The bottom half is just a plastic piece that kind of makes the bottom look pretty, and all the business goes on up top. But these do pop right off, which is great because you can just take them outside and hose them off, which this one needs. So the bottom half, no big deal. Pull out 4 screws, pull the bottom down, then we're ready to go to the roof where all the real work begins. I might be able to use this same piece already cut. The thickness of this gets cut. The new one, of course, came with a brand new one that we will mark and cut if we need to. But if I get lucky, I might be able to just use this one. I see a lot of people make mistakes on these, and myself included. When I first ordered these covers for these Maxxair fans, I got the kind that had to be like bolted in and stuff on the side. Then I realized that was the wrong kind. If your Maxxair fan has these little plastic things that stick up like this, then all you need is this type of fan cover that uses 4 clips, and that's it. So that whole thing will go away because this one has a cover built in and doesn't need that. All right, so let's get busy taking all of this goo off of here. A big chunk of this project is getting all that old sealant off. You know, it's been gooped on there. I've added to it over the years to replace little gaps and things like that. And the biggest concern there is you do not want to tear your TPO or EPDM roof. Most modern RVs have a TPO roof, which is essentially a rubber roof. But even using a plastic scraper, you want to be really, really careful to get in there and not get the corners in there and dig and make a tear. You also want to be careful not to stretch it, because if you're just pushing on it, you're going to start pulling and stretching that TPO, and you could possibly even tear it. What I found effective was to hold down the TPO right where the sealant is and just kind of scrape and pull. And once you get it going, I got rid of the scraper and just kind of started peeling it off, and it all came off fairly easily. I'm going to try to separate as much of the sealant as I can in this way. I think that'll have the least stretching effect on the roof material. But you want to find the right sealant that's correct for your roof. For us, that's Alpha 1021 or Dicor. After I got the sealant off, it was a pretty simple matter of peeling the old fan off of the roof. You want to be careful there too, because it's probably got some butyl tape, some butyl putty between the flange and the roof. And you don't want to just go willy-nilly ripping it off, because again, you could tear your TPO. You don't want to do that. That gearbox is just all stripped out. This shouldn't even be able to move this much. Pry this off gently so you don't tear the TPO. So I'm going to be a little bit careful here. Looks like they did use a good decent amount of butyl tape all the way around, so I appreciate that. Our stock fan was connected by 3 connectors. One of them was a little RJ11, RJ15 jack for the control panel that's on the wall. This new one has a infrared remote, so we're not going to be using that, so I just pulled that out and tucked that away. And then there's just 2 wires. There's a positive and a negative DC. Now you can just snip those and resplice them in. Our unit was connected with lever nut connectors, and that's basically just a little lever you pop up and the wire pops right out. So it made it super easy to both remove, and it'll make it easy once we get to the install part. So after I got all the die core and butyl putty and everything off of there, I noticed that the roof parts were stretched a little bit, you know, probably from me pulling it off. It's almost impossible to not stretch it a little bit. I've pulled the staples off of here so that I can pull and re-stretch this across the edge and put some new staples in here. I took the little flaps that go down into the holes, tightened them down a little bit and re-stapled them. Super easy process. But now the area is prepped and ready for the new fan. So now that I've got the area prepped, it's time to install the new fan. This is that bottom half. Hello. Hello. And this is the top half. Now they make this pretty easy in that the mounting plate for the new fan is separate, and it's a nice little light piece of plastic so you can work with it. So the first step you want to do is put down some new butyl putty, because you want to get a good putty between the mounting plate and the roof. You also want that butyl putty to go right where the screw holes are. That way you're going to put the screws straight through the putty and have that kind of sealed naturally underneath there. My first tip is put it on right side up the first time. If you're like me, you put it on upside down, you screw it in, and then you pull it all back off again, have to start over. Not a good time. All right, that was dumb. I have to redo that tape. Dang it. But putting that thing on, you put it on with the mounting brackets to the left and right of the RV and facing up. That's key. On top of the butyl putty, and then you just put, I think there are 16 screws into the roof. They come with the unit, so they're right length already. They're about 1 inch, maybe 1.25 inches, but they're designed to go into the roof. They pretty much went right where the old ones were, but they weren't exactly lined up, which I like, so I'm not drilling into old holes. That is good and secure. Now I'm gonna pull up the excess butyl tape. So now, per the directions, what I will do is die core over each of the screws and then apply it liberally all the way around the edges. Once you get that mounting plate down, then you've just got to seal it. And again, just put some die core, Alpha 1021, whatever your manufacturer recommends for roof sealant. Again, you want to use a self-leveling sealant up there. You don't want to be smoothing it out and stuff. The whole roof is covered with self-leveling sealant, and that's what's used up there. The self-leveling sealant can get a bit unruly and messy, but it's nice that it's self-leveling. You don't have to come back and do anything with it. You just kind of glob it on there and let gravity do the rest. So you want to put a dab on each screw head. That way they're kind of sealed. That'll level out. And then just put a bead all the way around. Be generous. There's no reason to be skimpy or neat. No one's ever going to see it up there. Plus it's going to self-level anyway. From there, it's just a matter of wiring the fan, laying it down, and putting the screws in. Now I mentioned we had the lever nut connectors. That made rewiring of this fan super easy. Red to red, black to black, clip it in, and done. It was super easy. Now if you don't have that, the kit for the fan does come with a couple of quick connector crimps on both sides, so you can crimp both ends and then connect them. Slide it in there. Snap that down. Done.
Your lunch is ready.
Okay, I'm almost done with this top half. We'll be down there in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Again, it's super easy wiring, 12 volts DC, not a big deal. The mounting plate has an O-ring type thing around it, so once you put the fan on top of it and screw it in, you don't have to do anything else since you've already sealed the mounting plate to the roof. And now the top part is done. Time to head inside. The inside is super simple for me. It has to be a little bit more work if you don't have quite the depth of roof that we had. I got lucky, and without any modification at all, I was able to pop it right in. It's in there, it's wired. Really the only part that's left is this bottom part, which is just for aesthetics. But before I bury all of my wiring, I want to make sure that this works. So I'm going to go put my fuse back in the fuse box and give this sucker a go. Look at that. Oh, there we go. And again, the only trick here is this TPO that I have hanging down in here. That needs to go behind it, obviously. So tuck that behind each of the 4 sides while holding it in place. And then the wires also are in this corner. You want to make sure those get tucked behind it. And that fits in like a glove. The bottom half might need to be modified a little bit to fit, but it's a real easy deal. Now, let's just do a little test here. Spin it around. So that's one big difference right away, is that this fan can go both directions. There's a little reversey button right here. While some of the parts of that install are a bit tedious, mostly removing the old fan, it's a super easy install. Almost anyone should be able to do it, as long as you're comfortable getting on your roof. A couple of ways this has upgraded us from our previous one. Number one, we don't have a separate cover and a separate thing that hits it and dealing with all that. The cover and everything is all built into this, along with the louvers in the back, which is really cool. It doesn't have to go up and hit something and then push on gears to stop and know when to shut down. I think it's that gear pushing and back pressure on the motor over and over and over again that eventually pushes that little transmission, that little block, pushes that little block apart. Again, this is the second one we've had do this. So I don't think we'll have that problem on this one. And also, this has a really cool thermostat feature on it where it comes on automatically. You can set a temperature on here. Once you go over that temperature, it will come on, turn on, and then once the temperature drops below your set level, it'll go back down and close, which is pretty cool. Another thing I see that's different on here that I like is that I have a lot more fine-grained control over the fan speed. I think we had 3 speeds, maybe 4 speeds on the old one, and it was kind of like the old ceiling fan where you got to go click, click, click 3 times to go down 1 or click once to go up 1. This is just a straight up and down, and it's in 10% increments, so I have 10 levels of control over the speed. The other benefit this one has over the other one is that it can operate in what's called ceiling fan mode, and it can blow air in. Now the directions say that you can actually leave the lid closed and put it in ceiling fan mode, but I don't really see how that would work. It seems like it would just create a vacuum up there. But it is kind of neat in that if it's a cool day outside and you want to pull cool air in versus trying to pull hot air out, you can do that. So you have a lot more flexibility with this. So now all I have to do is I'm going to pull off this old one, mount the new one, and that'll be it. So let's get that done. The second project we're going to talk about are taillights. Now, I have seen lots of mods on the Grand Design forums where people have added LED taillights up the side of their toy haulers. I liked that, and I bought the lights 3 years ago, and I've been carrying those things around ever since. It's just one of those things on the project list that isn't like a gotta do kind of thing. It's a nice to have kind of thing. But I wanted to finally get that tackled. I really wanted to have more lights back there. We've had more and more incidents lately where we've been driving in heavy traffic, and I want to make sure when I put on a turn signal that it really lights up and people can see versus just the 2 tiny ones down at the bottom that people probably aren't going to see. The biggest part of this project is figuring out where you're going to put the lights and how you're going to run the wires. Now, for a toy hauler, it's pretty simple for the most part because the toy hauler door has a giant frame with square tubes, probably about 4 or so inches square tubes running up the sides, right up on the edge of the RV, and of course across the top. But I wanted to make sure that those tubes were clear, so I took an access panel off and I got my scope out and put the camera up and down through there to make sure it was clear. So the only hole I had to drill for running wires was through the bottom of the frame into those tubes, because the taillights are underneath those and I'm going to need to run the wires down and tap into those. As far as placement of the lights, I just kind of eyeballed it, and then I came up with a number that would make them evenly spaced. I came up with 31 inches between each taillight, and I just eyeballed it and put them where I wanted them. Just like the fan, the wiring of these lights is pretty simple. You've got a positive and a negative. Now, these are 3 wires. There's also one for just running lights, and then there's one for bright lights. Of course, the bright lights are used for brakes and for flashing and things like that. Now, if you're going to run and tap into an existing taillights, you really don't have to figure out what's what, because you can look at the old taillight and figure it out. Our wiring from the nose to the tail had been replaced a couple of years ago, so it wasn't using red and black wire. It was kind of whatever the Mopeltex had to fix that issue. But again, it doesn't matter because I can look at the red, black, and white lines from the old taillights and figure out where to tap them in. I did need to get some primary wire to be able to run from the top to the bottom. Basically, that's all the wiring is. I've got 3 primary wires running from the top of the tube down to the bottom and out through the hole that I can tap into the taillights. Then all I have to do is tap each of my new taillights into that primary wire and then wire them at the bottom. I used some quick splice taps that are really easy for this type of project because it has one side of the splice passes through and then one side terminates. So my side that passes through gets my primary wire that runs up and down, and then I just tapped each of the 3 wires into its corresponding primary wire all the way down the line, and now I've got 3 taillights all wired in and coming out the bottom. And then I just use the same splices down below. Thinking back on this, I might go back and replace those splices with some waterproof ones just in case, because they are exposed underneath, but I do have them tucked up inside the bumper a little bit there, so they really shouldn't get wet, but I may keep an eye on that. So I got all of them wired in, and then the time of truth had come. I plugged in the truck and they worked great. Super stoked. I can't wait to do my next light check with Tara and have her see these nice bright lights.
We're getting ready to test out our new lights.
Ready to go check?
Check. Those look sweet. Ooh, left. Right. Brake. Reverse. Those are fancy.
Coming up.
Chad wants to come and check out his handiwork.
Checking out your handiwork, eh?
Yeah, I haven't really been able to see it with the door up and everything. Oh, yeah.
Nice, huh?
Once the wiring was all good and I knew the lights worked, I wanted to seal the lights a little bit better. So I unscrewed them, I put a little dab of silicone on each hole, I put some around the big hole where the wires go through, put them back on and screwed them down, and that's it. It probably took me about 2 to 3 hours, primarily because I had to drill the holes from the bottom up. I also had to drill holes for the lights to mount and for the wires to go in. The back of each light has a plastic piece sticks out about that far, and it's probably about ½ an inch around. So I needed a bigger hole for those, and I used a step bit, which are great. As far as the fan, probably, again, another 2 to 3 hours. So both of these projects could really be done in one day if you wanted to.